There is a wide variety and wide array of video games that individuals can play, sink their teeth into, and invest their time and money into. And given the competitive nature of video games, whether it be for PC, console, or mobile games, it is a very difficult thing to not only grab players' attention, but keep them there long term. Keep in mind, there is a balancing act. Each and every one of these companies wants to earn and increase their revenue, so it's a balancing act between keeping the players' attention and adequately rewarding them, but also getting them to spend money in some way, shape, or form that keeps your business running. And Blue Archive, which is the focus of today's video, is doing that rather well, and I want to discuss it. Today I want to talk about why Blue Archive is a good gacha game, but more importantly, what makes it a good game. Before we begin, I would like to remind you, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing or leaving a like down below. Both are things that greatly help out the channel, and if you want to be involved in future videos, consider heading over to the Discord server. And this won't just be for Blue Archive videos, but also for any other game I play in the future. With that in mind, let's talk about Blue Archive. One of the core foundational aspects I would like to get across beforehand is Blue Archive, from a surface standpoint, seems like a game that is entirely designed around selling you the characters solely because of their live 2D models. And don't get me wrong, the live 2D models are very, very pretty. They're great animated, they have wonderful music, and the stories and characters themselves are nicely designed to begin with. However, I think for the individuals who have delved further in that, whether you've paid attention to the relationship storylines or legitimately paid attention to the story of the game or even the events, Blue Archive is a much more deep game than it seems. I asked many individuals across my Discord server multiple questions, and we're going to go through them here and now. The questions I asked them were as follows. What was your first gacha game? Why did you start playing Blue Archive in the first place? Why did you continue playing Blue Archive afterwards? What is the worst experience you've had whilst playing Blue Archive? And what's one of the most memorable moments you've had because of Blue Archive? For fairness sake, I will answer all of these questions first, and then we're going to delve into the answers of each and every one of these respective members of my community. However surprising or unsurprising it may seem, my first gacha game was Genshin Impact. It's one of the reasons I continuously mention it throughout videos, and one of the reasons why I'm both excited, happy, and disappointed for it, because it's my first experience and one of the games that I continuously go back to. I played it from release and have continued playing it since. Afterwards, I delved into games like Arknights, Shanghai Impact, Blue Archive, Azur Lane, and so on. For the second question, I started playing Blue Archive solely because I had nothing better to do. I had seen one video on YouTube and decided I was going to give Blue Archive a shot. I was in a much more trial and error phase of game playing. I didn't have any good game to go back to repeatedly, so I was willing to test out and attempt to get involved into any game. Blue Archive was the only one that happened to stick at that time. Now, I continued playing Blue Archive because of the characterization. I began to actually be vaguely interested in the characters that I was picking up over time. After playing random relationship storylines, I went back to the ones I had skipped over specifically to pay attention to the dialogue and learn more about these units, and eventually it piqued my interest and I began to care about the story and the units as well. So ultimately, Blue Archive's gameplay didn't necessarily pique my interest at first, but it was the characters themselves, and that made the act of earning their live 2D screens at the very end all the more worthwhile. For the worst experience I've had personally while playing Blue Archive is spending all of my Pyro Zenny, which is a gacha-based currency, and all of the free pulls I got for the anniversary on the Wakamo banner and not getting her. I believe it was around 140 pulls and no Wakamo came home. But even so, I've gotten lucky on my account to begin with, so I can't complain. And finally, one of my most memorable moments for this game, and because of Blue Archive, was early on in my travels. And for me it's difficult to explain, so I'm going to try and do it as best I can. But there's a distinct moment, I think, when you cross over from an individual who's vaguely interested in the gacha game to an individual who legitimately learns to care about it and actually enjoys it. And I think for me, that moment sort of came about when I began to drop other gacha games and focused a bit more on the characters. The Azuna banner was right around, and I had picked her up because I liked foxes. I didn't like her design, I didn't care too much overall, I thought she was cute, but that was it. At that time, I hadn't done the relationship storyline. At that time, I hadn't done the event story, so I just picked her up because I had nothing else to do and I wanted a new character. And I remember going through the cafe, going through the lessons, leveling her up in terms of relationship rank, and slowly going through her relationship storyline. And I believe around the third time, the third message, or the third interaction, I decided I might as well pay attention, just so that way I could learn a bit more about what she was in the first place. And it's that distinct moment where that vague general interest sort of turns into a legitimate fact or appeal of a character. The moment when you learn to legitimately like or care about a character in a story or a game or a book is very impactful, and for me it's very important, and it's one of the reasons that I decided to stick with this game. because it's very difficult, in my opinion, to get attached to a unit who you don't necessarily see that emotion from. There are so many other games that have much wider variety of character models or assets or even facial animations that make it easier to see a much more human appeal to them, that when a game can only work with PNGs, it's much more difficult and it's a much more unique and special thing when that attachment actually happens. I think with books you can imagine a lot more, so your imagination sort of fills in the gaps, but with gacha games, especially games like Blue Archive and Arknights, there isn't much expression shown on screen. So whilst you have some imagination to fill in the gaps, you are given a lot of information firsthand. So the most memorable moment for me with Blue Archive was around the end of my first month while playing the game. It was when the Azuna banner dropped, I got her, and I actually learned to like her character. And it was the turning point that sort of made me become a lot more interested in what was going on in the story. Subsequently, I never actually completed that event storyline for the character, and now that she has a rerun, I have a chance to go back in and learn more and do more and finally complete it and get the full story, and I'm glad for that. So those are my answers. Let's delve into the answers of my community. The first gacha game for many of the individuals here was either Genshin Impact, Crusader's Quest, Azure Lane, Girls Frontline, or Battle Cats. Some of these I've heard of, others I have not, but ultimately I will be giving them all a shot, and each of them will get a sort of dedicated video similar to this one, but depending on the circumstance it may have more or less community interaction, who knows. One of the common themes you'll see with individuals who decided to give Blue Archive a shot at the beginning is mostly due to either a character such as Hina, or because of consistent advertising, negative or positive. An example of this could be seeing Shiroko in an ad. It could also be hearing individuals badmouth or insult the players of this game, or even the comparisons between it and other gacha games such as Girls Frontline. Then again, we do have the head padding of characters, which I'm not gonna lie, is a very nice feature to have. For the individuals who decide to give their answer on why they chose to stay, one of the consistencies you can see here is a lot of individuals like how casual Blue Archive is and how much it respects your time and your investment. The game will have you grind out certain items or certain characters, and ultimately at some point in some extent each of those characters will be used, or each of those items will be used. Nothing goes to waste. You could always find a situation to use a character, and I'm aware that in other games you can find situations in which you can use the character and pull them up, but they won't be optimal. Blue Archive actively has either raids, events, certain commissions, certain quests that really emphasize using one specific unit, or maybe two, or even a few, or it could even be it prefers mystic units that utilize a certain type of weaponry. Because of the different variations in how they perform based on their environment, pretty much every unit will be used at some point. So even if you build a unit that you don't use now, you may use them later, and it's because of that investment, it's because of that respect of your time and your commitment that the game kind of earns a good reputation among its players. The game doesn't take up too much of your time, but it also respects what little you choose to give it, and it's very casual. The style and the theme are consistent and nice for a vast majority of individuals. I mean, let's be honest here. Style, theme, aesthetic, and design are one of the primary reasons any of us choose to continue playing a game to begin with. Now, the worst experience usually revolves around gacha. An example could be not pulling a red or explosive type of unit in the early game when all enemies are weak to explosive-based units. It could be doing 80, 90 pulls without a 3-star, or even 200. And of course you have the more common connectivity issues which do plague a bunch of different games, or PvP, which, let's be honest here, nobody really cares about, and if you do, perfectly fine. Now, the most rewarding or memorable moments vary differently. Once again, for me, it was finally falling in love with a character and finding a reason to play and continue to hop on. For another individual, it was hearing the Hatsune Miku song, which if you haven't heard, I really suggest listening to. I will link it in the description and the comment section down below. It's a wonderful song. I can't play it here for copyright reasons though, and I do apologize for that. Another could be getting the character you finally want. In this case, it was Hina, and don't get me wrong, I do want Hina. I don't have her yet, but I want her. Another memorable moment could just be finding synergy between units when the game is new, when there's nothing out that really teaches you how to play and how to combat certain enemies. That early sense of discovery, that sense of viability where you don't know what does what, so you're learning it yourself, is a very valuable experience, and it's something that I think is lost on a lot of older gacha games, especially if you go out looking for guides. Similar to this, however, it could be finding love and finding different experiences that you didn't really expect from this game in terms of story-based content, because a lot of individuals didn't go into this game expecting there to be a deep story. And finally, there's raid content, finally doing really well in your first raid or reaching a high rank to begin with. And finally watching that one character who you really hope can finish off that raid boss in a record time, actually do it, actually complete and meet your standards for that moment and give you a high score. Now look, I by no means am saying that Blue Archive is this perfect, groundbreaking experience that you really need to play, but what I am saying is that Blue Archive is a good game. and it's more than a lot of surface level attraction that keeps a lot of players coming back to it, and I honestly think that if you haven't given the game a shot, you should. Don't go into the game reading guides and reviews unless you absolutely feel like you need to. Instead, go into it blind, learn things yourself, pay attention to the story, or maybe find a character you like. I think that it's very easy to fall into a trap early on where you expect the game to be bad so you don't give it a chance to shine, or where you expect it and continuously compare it to other games so it doesn't meet those expectations because you're constantly comparing it to something it's not. Blue Archive isn't Arknights. Blue Archive isn't Genshin. It's not a complex game. It's not a game where you have control over the units. Blue Archive is a story that is told to you. You are invested in these characters in the same way your character that you play as is. And if you give the game that opportunity to bring you into its world, to introduce you into its characters, into its setting, I really think the game can shine. I think Blue Archive is an amazing game. I think Blue Archive is a good game, and this is sort of my perspective on it. And if you play the game, tell me your thoughts down below. Do you like Blue Archive? Ultimately though, I think Blue Archive deserves more attention. It deserves more appreciation. People look at it as a surface level game just because of its characters, but it's a lot more than that, and I wish people would really see that. But I'm just one guy on YouTube, and if you happen to agree, leave a like, subscribe, and comment, and I hope to see you next time. Enjoy your gacha, enjoy your gameplay, and I hope you have good luck. Goodbye.